Hello Booktube. I just wanted to make a quick update and talk about this book I read on the passage from Plymouth in the UK to France. I am currently in the marina of Roscoff. That is the marina of Roscoff. And I just found this little hill that I could climb to make a quick video and talk about this book I read on the way. And about my future plans, because when we were only about a mile from here, most of the 24-hour passage with the sailboat, the transition of the boat died, and we had to be towed in. So that is not a small problem. That's probably gonna delay the rest of the sail down to Portugal for a while. Time that I don't have. I don't have time to spend 2, 3, 4 weeks in Roscoff waiting for an engine, doing nothing. Of course I could do something because I have a lot of books here. I could just use the boat as sort of like my little reading room and spend that time reading. But it's summer, which means that it's one of the very few moments of the year when I get to do whatever I want, where I don't have academic deadlines or anything like that. So reading is not my priority on this moment, although, as you might have noticed, I am getting to do quite a good deal of reading, given the amount of things that I am also doing simultaneously. And this wasn't even like a predicted reading. I just sort of realized that if I didn't read on the passage with the amount of time that I was gonna have there, I was just not gonna read it. So I was like, okay, let's read it now, because otherwise it's gonna become one of those books that fill yourselves and never get read. And because I'm feeling kind of like reading a lot of pop science, any nature stuff related lately, just because the moment for me to decide if I want to do a master's is coming, and I'm realizing that probably I would not want to continue my education on the humanities, but rather probably jump to the natural sciences. So that's my update. I will probably continue my trip by foot or bike or train or something down to Morocco. And this is the book I have read on the last couple of days. In addition to all of that, this phone is about to die. I don't even know if I'm gonna be able to finish this video. Even if this video is unfinished, I will upload it so that you are up to date with with how things are on this side of the screen. But yeah, that's another thing. I need a new phone. I always try to, first of all, my phones, all the devices that I own are always second-hand, just because I don't want to sort of finance an industry that I don't agree with, and they tend to always be also old, and I tend to push them for a long time. And because I have a very active life, they always get into the last couple of years that I have any phone, any computer, tends to be kind of like a zombie stage, and this phone is approaching that. I can see sort of the wires through the screen as I look at it right now. So yeah, this is my only means of communicating with you, and it might die soon, which means that I might take a couple of weeks until I can find another one I can afford, hopefully with a better camera, so we can all see each other better and a better screen as well. But yeah, so to the book, I have not much to say about it. I am already 2 books away from it in terms of my reading. This happens to me all the time, that I get to a book and then by the time I have the time to talk about this book, I am already 1 or 2 books away, in the sense that I am already reading something else, and I have already read something else in between, which means that my thoughts are not as recent and not as fresh as they could have been. However, there is not much to say about this book. It's very much what it looks like. It's a book about insects, about the insect decline. It's above all a book about ecology. This book, more than any other book I've read on the pop science side, is fully dedicated and fully compromised with the ecological cause, to put it simply. of course, at the beginning, just like every other book of this kind, starts with sort of like a natural history. In this case, a natural history of insects. Is of course also packed with interesting facts and comments about ways in which insects are very curious creatures and why we should value them. It does manage to make you look at insects differently. I've never been. I mean, I have been as a kid. I have actually been the kind of person that is disgusted by insects, the kind of person that would jump off a cliff before being anywhere near a spider, for example. But I am no longer anything like that. I think living among tarantulas in Mexico and Dominican Republic, and having a scorpion spider next to my face at 6 a.m. while I was trying to have my morning wee in the toilet are experiences that have sort of like made me see the insects with a different perspective. Also, I am and I have always been aware that they are just living creatures like any other, and if I value the life of any other living creature, why wouldn't I value the life of an insect? On top of all of that, this book makes you aware and shows you in which piece of the puzzle of the symbiotic planet in which we live insects feel, how important they are, and how fundamental they are for us and for the world to keep rotating in the way it does, very much. And at the same time, it's also a book that is quite aware that that is a wrong argument, that arguing that insects should be protected because it's in our interest to have a planet that is rich in insect life is the wrong argument. Is again looking at the argument from the perspective of takers that we have pretty much taken. I know that's random, but that pretty much we have adopted in every single aspect of our lives, in our relation to the natural world. They deserve to exist just because they exist and because we don't need to kill them, and as in most cases the things that we do to the environment that give us some kind of like short-term, normally financial benefit guarantee our long-term demise as a species. And that is very well put through this book. I also like that the book is not it doesn't limit itself by its subject. It touches on other topics and other things that are relevant, like the meat industry and why reducing the meat consumption would also make sense as a move to reduce the impact that we have as individuals in this world. This is not gonna be good. I don't want this to turn into like an activism sort of like video or anything like that. If you have access to this phone in which, or computer or whatever in which you are looking at this video, and you are also a person that knows booktube, then you already have all the resources to know why the meat industry is something that needs to be stopped, and that you have all the tools at your disposal to stop it, to stop your part on it, to stop taking part on that, both for ethical, environmental and health reasons, the three of them, but most importantly ethical, I'd say. Although the environmental argument is the one that weighs the most in this book, as it tends to do in science books, and I understand why. I think it's weaker than the ethical argument, but I understand that it's also more universal because we are much more self-centered and just egocentric creatures, much more focused in our own interest than empathetic at this point. So yeah, I mean, that is the book. Something I also really like about this book is it gives names. It shows. It talks about like different companies that the writer, Dave Goulson, has been sort of like fighting against, and that have even trying to defamate him, and that have used these workers. Like there was one, I think it was signed well, read the book. I don't remember. I'm not gonna say the wrong name, but there's a whole part of like about pesticides and our own sort of like phobia to natural life, and how that pretty much works in our against us, and how like even farmers just lose more money by investing in pesticides, and this is being demonstrated, than they would earn much more basically if they were to renounce pesticides. And that how like adults and children, they already have like an average amount of these poisons in their own bodies, because of the abundance of these products in everything that we handle that is edible. So there is a number of reasons to protect the insects, and to a number of things to keep in mind. I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted. I also like that it does talk about the UK, and it talks about a problem that I've seen firsthand, which is how like in the UK every park, every area is sort of like protected somehow. Even though it's one of the countries that has the biggest sort of like land dedicated to sort of like national parks and natural parks and protected areas and all of that, simultaneously is the country that I've seen by far that has a higher lack of wilderness, and that is including Scotland and including Wales and including Cornwall. I feel like every time I tell an English person that they don't have a single forest, there is nothing in the UK that can be called a forest. They always appeal to Scotland or Wales just because it's further, and they have sort of like this mystical idea that there's more nature in those places. But because of invasive species and human practices, there is really nothing in Scotland other than space that can be seen as wilderness. There's a lot of space in Scotland and a lot of space that hasn't been built, but there's no really forest in Scotland. There's no forest that I've seen in Scotland where I thought I could get lost here. There's a lot of space, and that's great, a lot of space without buildings, without pollution. That's amazing. I'm sure if you go to the Highlands, you would probably find some place that actually feels like it's being untouched. But the UK, in terms of wilderness, is as bad as it gets, really. Like, I haven't seen anything worse, and I've been in quite a few places by now, and quite a few continents as well. So yeah, and I think that's one thing that this book sort of like is always is kind of like mocking and taking for granted that the reader already knows about it, which is it's sort of like manifested or represented perfectly in sort of like the human reaction when to like flying insects, right? Like just the typical reaction that you will get from a civilized urban human is running away, screaming, or trying to kill it. It's life coming through the window, and somehow you see it as the opposite, something to be repulsed by, something to be disgusted by, something to take away, keep away from your house. And it's something that I think it was Eric Fromm who called it necrophilia. It's something that Eric Fromm used to see in cities, sort of like the law for death. Nietzsche would call it will to nothing, if I were to misread Nietzsche for my own interests, as I usually do. But yes, it's for me it's sort of like a cultural point, like a cultural fascination, and pretty much I don't know. I don't want to say erotization, but sort of like a cultural attraction that we have cultivated towards death objects. So towards dead objects, towards everything that lacks life. And simultaneously and proportionally an increase on our disgust and alienation from everything that breathes life. And the UK is a good example of that as a country, in my opinion, because it's a country where every forest feels in every single way artificial, in every way is domestic. It's every animal that you see is domestic as well. There is no that's what I meant, but the lack of wilderness. There is nature, there is green in the UK, but it's green that it feels like it's being sprayed with It's very well. It's also like visible in sort of like these typical gardens that you would see, where like every leaf of grass is cut at the same height. That obsession with geometry, with cleanliness that again is completely incompatible with life. Life is messy and muddy and dirty and chaotic, and of course, in all of that mess and dirty and mud, there is harmony. But that harmony cannot be engineered by human hands. And by wanting to engineer it and control it and exploit it, we have very much alienated it from its essence. So, yeah, this book probably, if you are the kind of person that I think you are, because of the kind of area of the world that you need to be inhabiting in order to have access to this video, and the kind of area of booktube and internet that you are in fact inhabiting in order to have arrived at this video, then you probably know most of the things that are going to be said here, not explicitly but at least intuitively. So I'm not saying that you need to read this video, that you must read this video, but you certainly need to be more aware, as we all need to be more aware of the information and the hard truths that are said here. And of course, this is still a fascinating subject. It's still a history, like a natural history of insects. It's still a bunch of interesting facts about different creatures that you didn't even know existed. Statistics, all of that is here. All the things that you normally look in your weekly science book. And also, of course, there is the ecological speech, rambling, whatever you want to call it. But also, at the end, there is a manifesto and a list of solutions. This is not just complaining, this is offering solutions. It feels like the writer, Dave Goulson, is definitely committed to this cause, and he doesn't just want to complain. There is many solutions. There is solutions that apply to you, solutions that apply to the environment nationally and regionally. For all of those reasons, I've come to respect this book a lot and what it's trying to do. I feel like the writer is more optimistic than I am, but I think that he's trying to be optimistic, because I think that pessimism often leads to non-action, and he's trying to start something, which I think is great. I think that if you want to write, you might as well write with more energy than your reader has for the subject that you're writing about. And I enjoyed that momentum, and I enjoyed this book, so I recommend it. As to the next videos and trips and everything, I have no idea where I will be, and I have no idea when I will be able to make another video. However, I am still reading, so I will always try to find a little corner like this, hopefully in beautiful places like this one, next to the ocean, where I can look at sailboats and with trees behind, to talk about the next books I read, which will probably still be a bit like natural. Yeah, I'm gonna read a couple more science or non-fiction nature writing books, especially one that I have been waiting for a long time to read, and another one that I did not expect to read, just like this one, which will be The Living Mountain by Nan Shepard. That one, just because it's very short, I know it's good, I've heard it from many people that's important to me has read it and told me to read it. And because I have never read a book about Scotland and the Scotland natural side. And the other one is The Pilgrim at Tinker Creek, which Steve Donaghy once said that it might just be the best nature writing book ever written. And because he said that, I gave that book, the copy that I had ready to read, to my best friend, and he just sent me an audio telling me that he's falling in love with the writer and that is one of his favorite books, and so on and so forth. So now I am getting incredible FOMO, because I just gave that book to him, and I happen to have a new copy that I got for myself to also read it, and I have a few days before we start the read along with Randy Ray for The Name of the Rose, so I might try to read that as well. So yeah, that's all. Have a nice day. I'll try to keep you updated. and fair winds.